I've been to 87 countries now. When I was there, it was really remote, really hard to get to. Climb, old ancient stone house, knock on the door. That's all right, yeah.
So I met our next guest walking on the street. We locked eyes and I knew I had to sit down with him because he looked like the most interesting man I've ever seen. This is going to be a two-part series. This one's going to be very condensed, short, probably half the length of it. The next one's going to be uncut, raw, the whole interview. Here we go. I guarantee you, you're going to enjoy the story. Hi, please tell us your name and where are you from?
My complete name is Sergius Michael Patrick Zagarov. I go by Michael Zagarov. I was born in Houston, Texas, in the United States, but I've lived in China for the past 8 years, and I live right now in Shandong, Yantai.
What are you doing in China? Why are you living there?
I teach English as a second language.
What do you like and dislike about China? Some pros and cons.
Wow. What do I like? The Chinese people on the whole, are fairly civilized, cultured, generous, inquisitive. They hear from somewhere else. Really, where are you from? Oh, they're so interested. Negative things. I don't know. Honking the horn in traffic is a negative thing that I don't like. And I notice that no one does it here. There's very little honking here. It's really popular in China. My brother says, well, you've been there 8 years. Are you driving a car now? I said, no, I don't want to drive here because they drive like fish. You know, they drive like this. They don't pay attention. Nobody uses the mirrors. They just drive. And I don't want to drive there. And so they have something like Uber, which is called Didi, and that's the easiest way. I don't worry about a car. So, and the language is probably the biggest negative thing. I've been there so long. Another thing my brother says, how's your Chinese? I say, well, I think I speak it fairly well, but the Chinese don't understand me. They're just like,
what are you doing here in Laos?
I have lived in several places in China that were cold, and I don't like the cold. I would rather be baking in summer in dry desert or jungle than to be cold. I can always cool off a little bit and be happy. You know, if it's hot, I can do this and I feel a little better. Can you see that?
So what other countries have you been to?
Oh my. I've been to 87 countries now. Oh, you were asking about travel. First of all, well, I moved from Hangzhou to Shandong Yantai, which is up in the northeast. It's a coastal city, and we're across from North Korea, across the Yellow Sea. But it's the coldest place because it's on a peninsula.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of moisture, so a lot of snow. And so the people said, "You're kidding, Michael. We have 8-foot snow drifts." I thought, oh God. So I went through 2 snows and it wasn't terrible. It was a little snow, you know, it's kind of fun. But I thought it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
So I have for the last 4 or 5 of the 8 years, I've left China and gone to someplace warm. So 3 years ago, Thailand, I was in Thailand when the COVID began. Then last year to, Cambodia and Vietnam. And this year I came to Laos.
Okay, from the 87 countries you've been to, any single one stand out, or are they all the same? Tell me a little bit about all of them.
I loved Turkey. I loved Istanbul. I loved being able to go to the hammam and be scrubbed by a big burly man, you know? Yeah. And I loved the food. And one thing I didn't like about Turkey was the food. In restaurants, they weigh the food. When you buy food, they have a little plate, they'll put something and they'll weigh it. Yeah. They want to be sure you're not getting too much, you know, and you got to pay for that. But other than that, Mexico, I lived in Mexico. It was the first country I lived in. I lived there twice more because I learned Spanish and I could communicate fluently in Spanish. I was also a student in Germany when I was in high school. I was an exchange student and I speak German 80% fluency. I can't really talk about chemical structure or politics, but I don't know what I'd do. I don't have a lot of savings. Most people save money all their lives for eventual retirement.
What about families, friends? Tell me about your personal life.
Oh, I don't want to go into the deepest, darkest parts of it, but I have a brother, and I don't think he would do anything to help me. I have a sister, but I really don't want to go there.
Any weird stories during your travels? If like that's a very interesting story. Factions don't go. But anything crazy happened to you? Something dangerous or this holy shit moment?
National Geographic has always been one of my favorite magazines. I don't even know if they produce it anymore, but they did an issue. Now it's 40, 50 years ago. And it was about the 5 places in the world where the oldest people in the world are. And they said that one of those places was Hunza, this area of far northern Pakistan. Something about the climate, the water is all melted glacier. It has gold in it. So they eat very little meat. They eat a lot of apricots and there's just something about it. They had people that were living to be 120, 130. The National Geographic went there with a specific series of tests and examinations to do because they were thinking illiterate people, they may not know how long a year is, but you would interview these people and you could more or less figure out, yeah, they probably are right around that age. And so there was a man shown in the magazine, Wazir Juno. Wazir is like a minister to the king. Well, he had been there a long time. So they interviewed him and they figured out he was probably 108. And I wanted to meet that man, I wanted to meet a man who had touched 3 centuries, So, or 2 centuries anyway. And I go to Hunza and I'm one of the first 1,000 non-Pakistanis to go there.
Yeah.
Now it's open. Now there's hotels and restaurants and da-da-da. When I was there, it was really remote, really hard to get to. And I went to Hunza. And I'm asking around, Wazir Juno, oh yeah, that's the hill. Climb, old ancient stone house, knock on the door. Wazir Juno, this looks like to me an old man. Well, that's his grandson. Brings me in, and here's this ancient, venerable man who himself is so pleased to see me.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. But I sought him out. And please sit down. They speak a little English because it was Indian colony, Have some tea, have some fruit. They invited me for dinner and they said, what would you like? I said, you've got some amazing fruit here.
Yeah.
Well, they had 20 kinds of fruit. They just spread it on the table. That's what we had for dinner. Wazir Juno he was 113 when I met him. He was 108 in the magazine.
Yeah.
113. And he lived to be 118 years old. Now, have you heard of Shangri-La?
Yes.
Shangri-La is an idealized concept of a place somewhere where people live forever. It's the Fountain of Youth or something. And it was made up by a man named James Hilton, who was an English writer who wrote a book called Lost Horizon about some people in China in the 1930s, foreigners trying to escape a revolution whose plane crashes in the Himalayas, and some monks come and take them to this magical valley. And I realized when I was in Hunza, I said, this might be Shangri-La. And I found out later that was the inspiration for Shangri-La, Hunza, that James Hilton had read about, had never been there. But here I was sitting with a 113-year-old man in his house, drinking tea, and I thought, it occurs to you sometimes, who are you? Who are you? Michael from Texas? And you're sitting with 100, that may not be the thing you're asking about.
That's incredible. That's honestly what we want to hear, the reason why you travel. Do you ever have any regrets, decisions that just not, like, do you ever consider, why didn't I stay in the U.S.? Why did I travel? I don't have any retirement plans now. Do you have any regrets about that?
There's a slight regret about not having money, but I left Houston in 2015 because we had a second flood, huge flood, and it flooded my mother's house. The first time was 3 or 4 years before it flooded her house. In the recent fires in Los Angeles, and I haven't heard the news in 3 weeks, I don't know if they're still burning, But I think about people who lose everything. A house burns and things are different now. Now you have digitization of photographs and documents. We didn't in the past. So you had a fire, a flood, it's gone. And all the pictures of my wife, of my family, gone. Ancient pictures of ancestors, gone. Luckily, I have some things on my computer. Luckily.
Finally, I want to get some of your advice for anyone that wants to travel, but they're kind of either on the fence or unsure. What advice do you have for them?
Do it. If it takes selling some of what you think is necessary in your life. I wanted to go back to China, and I had a set of 16th century Spanish chairs that I really valued. And they were beautiful ancient wooden chairs. I sold them to a hotel in Palm Springs. I can go onto their website and see my chairs. Yeah. It's great, but I don't need them. I had an autograph of Marlene Dietrich, a famous German actress. I sold that. I sold most of my good stuff. Yeah. And I'm glad I did because it allowed me to travel. So live a simpler life. You don't really need name brands. People I have Chinese ask me, what brands do you like? I said, none. I have nothing that has a name on it. Why should I provide free advertising to a company? I don't wear anything that's an advertisement. And be willing to travel cheaply. You don't need 4-star, 3-star. You can go to this is a 1 or 2-star hotel. The breakfast is fairly simple, but what do you need? You need a bed. You don't even always need hot water. If it's a hot place, you need cold water to bathe in. So be able to travel cheaply. Don't take it all with you. I always take too much. I take too many clothes. Yeah. I take too many shoes. You can probably find it where you go. If you really need it, buy them there when you get there. Yeah. Be willing to eat in the cheap places. Thailand, the best food is on the street. I've noticed even in China since I've been living there, the best food is not in the fancy places. The best food is what grandma and grandpa make on the coal burner, and you can find that, and you can find that here. You can go to the villages and have wonderful food. So be willing to travel cheaply. Travel on the trains in 2nd and 3rd class. Travel on the buses. Meet the real people. I never do a tour. Now I will say, this trip, I took one of the first and last tours I will ever take. Group tour. Because I went to this company in Luang Prabang. There were so many things that I wanted to see that I wasn't sure I'd be able to find on my own. Yeah. A waterfall, a Hmong tribal village, a cave, this, a that, And this one company put together a whole 8:30 in the morning to 5:30 in the evening tour, including a boat trip up the Mekong River, a wonderful lunch. It was $65. And why? Because they usually have 10 to 20 people, but they only had 4. So it was an English couple and me and Kong. And it was great. It was wonderful. And I got to see everything that I wanted to see, had this wonderful meal on the boat, watched the sunset. So be willing to do it on the cheap, and you can really have a great time. You don't have to do a 2-week tour. You can extend it because you're doing it on cut rate, but it's not cut rate. You're going to have a better experience by doing it simply.
Got it. Well, Michael, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your story.
Oh, I've enjoyed this so much too. Thank you.
Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think of his experiences, traveling, China, all the different countries. Anything you want to share. A very interesting man. He looks straight out of a storybook to me. I seen him. I'm like, this man's got some story to tell. He looks like Indiana Jones or like one of those characters in Goosebumps books I read growing up. But yeah, definitely interesting guy. And stick around until the next video. Hit the bell notification, the subscribe button, because I'm going to go ahead and show you the whole 30-minute, probably more, 32-minute interview without any cuts. More to come. So if you guys enjoyed that video, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next full version of his interview. Bye.
I'm out of money. I said, what? You had $500,000. Where is it? So we went to an auction of a Persian rug company that was supposedly going out of business. And that's where what little money I have still is.